Hey everyone, welcome back to season 2 of Omaha Mom Talks. I'm your host, Jessie Gutierrez. I'm so excited to welcome you back. If you are a new listener, hi, I'm Jessie. I'm a wife, a mama of 2. I have 2 girls, ages 4 and 7. I'm a mental health therapist and a human just trying to figure out this life as a mom, as a business owner, and just a human who's always trying to evolve and grow into a healthier version of myself. On this season opener, I'm going to chat with you guys a little bit about some of the things that led me to starting this podcast, which include the loss of both of my parents. We're going to be chatting about grief and some of the hard lessons that I learned along the way. Let's get into it. All right, guys, welcome back to season 2 of Omaha Mom Talks. I'm doing a solo episode today and just want to share with you guys a little bit about what you can expect for season 2 of Omaha Mom Talks. I'm going to be bringing more authentic conversations with you all with some amazing guests. We have some guests lined up from sex therapists to child experts, and we might even have our very first Omaha dad joining us. So stay tuned for that. Plus, I'm also launching a brand new call-in hotline where you can ask me your burning questions about mental health, motherhood, and any of the beautiful, messy moments in between. It'll be a chance for you to share your stories, say hi, or ask me a question, and I will give you some more details about that. I'm so excited to hear from all of you. For this first episode, I'm going to be sharing a little bit about some of my personal story and some of the hardest days of my life. I really am going to share my heart with you in this episode, which is difficult, but I think that it's important to understand a little bit about this podcast and what led me to starting Omaha Mom Talks. Of starting this podcast definitely started with my parents. I'm going to share with you a little bit about both of my parents who have both passed away. So trigger warning, this episode does involve and mention grief and loss. If that's something that you're not in a place where you are ready to hear, no problem. Stop listening. We'll connect with you on a future episode. So in 2020, just weeks before the world shut down due to COVID, is when my dad, Ron, passed away unexpectedly. So at the time, my dad, he was living in Texas, in the same city as my brother and his family, and we had just been given information that he was diagnosed with lung cancer. We were really in the initial stages of finding out about his lung cancer and discussing potential treatment options, and just a few weeks later, he was gone. It was a shock, and it totally turned my world upside down. My dad was definitely my person. I'm what people would call a daddy's girl for sure. He had this steady, loving force in my life. He always had a way of making me feel valued, supported, and just so deeply loved. He truly was the best, most silliest dad that I could ever ask for. The funny thing about my dad is he never wanted to be a dad before he met my mom. And so it was funny for us kids to hear that because he was the world's best dad, but it wasn't in his original plans. As a therapist for women and moms, I talk a lot about moms in my work. And I have to say that I wouldn't be the mom that I am today if it wasn't for my dad. He had just this amazing patience. He was super kind. He always showed unconditional love. And really that is the foundation for how I parent my kids. One of my favorite things about my dad, and something that I try to instill in my kids, is that he always made space for my big feelings. He was my person that I would call, in college and in young adulthood when I had what I thought was a crisis. And he always made time for me and made it seem important. And he really did help me navigate what I wanted to do. He never told me what I should do or what the answer was. He always really instilled in me that the decisions for myself were inside of me, and it was up to me to determine what those were. And that really helped give me self-confidence. And that's something that I hope to pass along to my sweet girls as well. I love thinking of him often. I just had one daughter at the time, my oldest, and my siblings had kids as well, so they all lovingly called him Pappy, and we all honor him by singing the silly songs that he made up for us when I was a kid. He has a bunch of funny sayings, and just missing him is something that I will carry with me always. Then just a few years later, in the summer of 2024, I lost my mom. My relationship with my mom has always been complicated. I love her deeply, and I've always felt her love for me. But at times our relationship was stressful, confusing, and complicated. Feels kind of taboo to talk about this openly and publicly, but I'm choosing to do so because I think it's important to share, because I know I'm not the only one that has had a challenging or difficult dynamic with their own mom. I definitely didn't have the typical Midwestern mom who was making casseroles for dinner every night. Instead, I had Teresa. My mom was one of a kind for sure. She was someone who, honestly, she survived the most horrible things that you could ever imagine happening to a child. And it truly breaks my heart to think about the pain that she carried as a young girl. In her adult life, she struggled with her mental health and had bipolar disorder, which made our relationship sometimes very intense and sometimes stressful. When she was manic, she often got herself into hard times financially with business ventures or big purchases that often left me and my siblings left to rescue her. I'm choosing to be real and open about this because, again, I know many people can relate with the pain and confusion that comes from loving someone with mental health challenges. And trust me, I get the irony of this, that I'm a mental health therapist and my sister is also a mental health therapist. So I will definitely note that it has shaped who I am as a therapist and also as a mother. Watching her navigate her own battles has taught me so much about resilience, compassion, and the importance of support. So my mom was traveling to California, her home state, and she was actually flying back her return flight to Nebraska. When she was at the airport, she had a medical emergency and she didn't make it. It was completely unexpected, and to be honest, I thought that old gal was going to outlive us all. She just had this way of always landing on her feet. And so I thought she would be with us for a long, long time. And so that unexpected loss really was earth-shattering for me. Losing my mom hit me in ways that I definitely didn't expect. It left me feeling like I lost my anchor in this world. It was like the ground had been shifted underneath my feet. I definitely didn't anticipate feeling this way. I think it's something about losing the woman who gave me life that really reached deep into my identity. And then, of course, the acceptance of I no longer have parents on this earth. It was a really challenging time. If you haven't experienced an intense loss, let me tell you that grief is messy, it's nonlinear, and at times it's really exhausting. But it's also a reminder of that deep, lasting impact that person had on us. A lot of people might be familiar with the stages of grief by Elizabeth Kübler-Ross, like denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. I want to share a little bit about the common misconception with the stages of grief. So Elizabeth Kübler-Ross, she's a female psychiatrist, and she developed this model and published a book in 1969 that was actually a model to describe the emotional journey of terminally ill patients coming to terms with their own mortality. This was a framework for healthcare providers and others to help the emotional support of patients who had an illness that was going to lead to death. So this was not created for supporting those that were experiencing grief due to a loved one. This was about the process of dying, not the process of grieving a loved one. And in reality, grief doesn't fit into these stages. It's more like a spiral. It takes you back to intense feelings, sometimes of anger, deep sadness, oftentimes when you least expect it. Grief is also full of contradictions. It may make you feel intensely connected to the person that you lost while also feeling really alone and isolated. One of the biggest lessons that I learned in my own grief is that people that are grieving don't need advice or attempts to cheer them up. They need support over solutions. They need acknowledgement to feel safe and to feel supported and to feel heard. After my mom died, because of our complicated relationship, I had a lot of intense feelings of regret and blaming myself for boundaries that I had set or time that I had lost with her, or even like harsh words exchanged. And initially when I tried sharing this with the people closest to me who loved me very much, they would try to talk me out of feeling this regret or this blame. They'd say things like, oh, you shouldn't feel that way, or, oh, she wouldn't want you to be upset. And while I know they meant well and they wanted me to feel better, it also left me feeling like confused or misunderstood, or that my feelings were wrong and I should just hurry up and move on from those feelings. Which leads me to my next point, which is the importance of community during grief. Finding people who can sit with you in your grief without trying to fix it can be a powerful part of healing. Again, we don't need people to fix us while we are grieving. We need people to stand close to us when our world is feeling really wobbly. So I started this podcast during a time of this intense grief after losing my mom. So I didn't create this as a space just to focus on grief, but as a space to have important conversations that relate to motherhood. Again, because I know I'm not alone in managing the really hard stuff that life throws at us. I wanted to share my story, not just as a therapist, but as a daughter, a mom, and a fellow human trying to figure it all out. After my mom passed, I felt so unlike myself. I didn't know how I was going to show up for my patients at my office and hold space for them while I was carrying this heaviness. This heaviness totally zapped my energy. I felt like I had no skills to offer anyone, and I just didn't know how I was going to do it. I was able to take a little step back from work. So I was still working. I was in a period where I was coming from my summer caseload, which is a lighter caseload, to the fall where I would normally build up and take on more clients and more projects. But I decided to just carry on with the patients on my caseload and really take time to attune to my own grief and to be present for my kids, which felt best for me. Then I did a lot of reflection, and during that time, I landed on this idea for a podcast. This idea came to life, and although it was totally outside of my comfort zone, a really different project, something that I've never done before, I just decided to go for it, and it has given me life. It has been such a creative outlet for me. It's re-energized me in ways that I didn't even know that I needed. And I've loved having these conversations and connecting with so many of you online. And so for that, I'm so grateful. If you are somebody who has experienced or is experiencing grief, just please know that it's okay to feel it all. The love, the regret, the gratitude, there are so many layers. If you're carrying something heavy, please know that you are not alone and we can carry it together. I also want to add one of the books that really helped me that I read after my dad passed, and then I reread it after my mom passed. It's a really great book called It's Okay to Not Be Okay by Megan Devine. And it really just gives a nice raw reality of capturing what grief is, and how to essentially grief isn't something to just get over. And I think that's something that maybe a lot of us have been taught, or people that support us think that like it's something we're going to get over. And I love the way Megan Devine in her book really just talks about that reassurance of grief is something that will be with you lifelong, but our capacity to manage it changes over time. All right, guys. Well, thank you for listening and letting me share a little bit about my story. Again, I felt it was important to share a little bit about some of the challenges that I went through. And if you have gone through similar challenges, please know that you are not alone. I hope that this episode has been meaningful to you. If it has, share with a friend, rate or review the podcast. And don't forget to call in soon with your questions. We will share some details in the show notes on how you can connect with me there. And you might just hear yourself on a future episode. All right. I'm so grateful to you guys for going on this journey with me. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Bye. Omaha Mom Talks. Real moms, authentic conversations, no filter needed.